Okay, let's unpack this. We've got a stack of material here centered around a place that likely isn't the first spot that comes to mind when you think vacation.
No, probably not for most people.
Our source today is excerpted from something titled Discover Niger with FlightNHotels.com, and it kind of presents itself as a guide to what it calls an underrated travel destination.
Exactly. Yeah, it frames Niger as this sort of frontier for adventurous travelers. It highlights, a mix of history, nature, culture, that kind of thing.
And what really stands out is how it positions it, right? Explicitly off the beaten path.
Very much so, with this emphasis on authenticity and exploration rather than, say, mainstream tourism.
So our mission in this deep dive is really to dig into this specific source. We want to understand the core argument it's making for why someone should visit Niger.
And crucially, how this booking tool it mentions, FlightNHotels.com, is presented as the way to actually do it, to make the journey happen.
Exactly. It's about pulling out the key insights from this material. What's the picture it's trying to paint?
We're looking at how this guide wants the potential traveler to see Niger and, well, the whole travel experience there.
Okay, so the source kicks off with a pretty strong declaration. It calls Niger one of the most underrated travel destinations in the world. That's quite a statement.
It is bold, yeah.
How does it immediately try to back that up? What's the core appeal, according to this guide?
Well, it lists a few key things straight away. It talks about the natural beauty, first, dramatic desert landscapes, these lush oases popping up, river valleys along the Niger River.
Okay, painting a picture there.
Then it brings in the cultural depth. It specifically mentions ancient trading towns, steeped in history, and these vibrant traditional Tuareg festivals.
And it pairs that cultural side with adventure, right? Like camel trekking, exploring the Sahara.
Exactly. And what's interesting is how the source links all this directly to the idea of authentic experiences. It talks about minimal commercialization.
So it's suggesting the lack of big tourist crowds is actually part of the appeal.
Right. It leans heavily into that off-the-beaten-path identity. It's basically arguing you'll get a more, maybe, genuine interaction with the country and its people compared to more heavily touristed places.
Okay, so if this core appeal, this idea, grabs you, where does the source suggest you should actually go? It outlines several key destinations. Where do we start?
Well, naturally, it begins with the capital, Niamey, right there on the Niger River.
Makes sense.
The source describes it as a place where, tradition and modernity kind of intersect. It points out the National Museum, the big Grand Mosque, the really busy Grand Market.
Standard capital city highlights, but probably with a distinct feel.
And scenic cruises on the river are mentioned too as top activities.
And this is where the source starts weaving in its booking tool, right? Almost immediately.
Yeah, straight after listing Niamey's attractions, it mentions booking hotels there as, quote, easy via FlightNHotels.com. It specifically notes comparing prices across different kinds of places to stay.
So it positions the tool right away as the practical first step. Your base camp, sorted.
It's integrating the tool immediately from the source's perspective into the planning phase. Simple as that.
Okay, so moving beyond the capital, the source guides us north to Agadez, calls it the gateway to the Sahara. What's the deal with Agadez in this narrative?
Agadez gets presented as this really historic caravan hub. It talks about stunning earthen architecture, mud brick buildings.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And particularly the famous 16th century Grand Mosque there. Plus, the source highlights its old town as a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
UNESCO status. That definitely adds weight, underlines the historical importance the source is trying to get across.
Absolutely. And the activities listed. Exploring that historic old town, experiencing Tuareg culture. It mentions festivals specifically again, and naturally starting camel treks into the desert from there.
Right, the classic Sahara experience base. And the tool. How does FlightNHotels.com fit in here, according to the source?
This is where the source makes a more specific claim about the tool's capabilities for, let's say, non-standard travel needs. It says you can use FlightNHotels.com for rental car or desert safari transport.
Interesting. So suggesting the platform can handle booking vehicles and maybe connect you with local operators for those deeper desert trips.
That seems to be the implication, yeah. It's a key piece of the source's argument that the tool isn't just for, standard city hotels and flights.
Right. It can handle the logistics for more adventurous, maybe more remote travel. What about the actual natural wonders then? The source talks about the Air Mountains and the Tener Desert.
Yeah, this region is described with a real focus on dramatic scenery. Great for hiking, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
The source mentions stunning rock formations like the Bagzine Plateau.
Right.
It points out prehistoric rock art, which hints at, really deep historical layers.
Wow, ancient history out there.
And it highlights wildlife viewing, too. Lists things like gazelles, fennec foxes, various desert birds. So it's not just empty sand.
Good point. It's emphasizing life and history embedded in that landscape. And the tool features here too, I assume.
Yes. The source suggests FlightNHotels.com can help find accommodation even in these more remote areas, and also help book specialized desert tours, presumably with knowledgeable local guides.
So again, positioning the platform as having reach beyond the cities, which you definitely need for exploring those kinds of regions.
Exactly. Essential for the wilder parts.
Speaking of wildlife and nature, the source also includes W National Park. What's highlighted there?
W National Park gets flagged as a multi-country UNESCO site, so again, emphasizing its ecological importance.
Another UNESCO mention.
Right. And the source gives you a list of the kind of big wildlife you might hope to see. Elephants, lions, hippos, various antelopes, crocodiles.
Sounds impressive.
And a really remarkable diversity of birds, over 350 species mentioned. So a big draw for nature lovers.
Definitely. And how does the source link the booking tool to this park experience? Can you book a safari jeep on there?
Well, it doesn't explicitly say safari jeep booking, but it does suggest using FlightNHotels.com to find and book stays in the eco lodges or safari camps that are located either inside or near the park.
Ah, okay. So finding the accommodation for the nature experience.
Exactly. It frames it as a way to get comfortable lodging while being right there, conveniently close to the environment and the wildlife viewing, making that immersive nature trip easier to arrange.
Got it. So the source connects the tool directly to facilitating that. Now, beyond the capital, the desert, mountains, parks, the source also covers Zinder.
Yes, Zinder. Noted as the former capital, it's presented as a really vital cultural and historical center.
Okay, another historical angle.
Few sites mentioned are the Sultan's Palace and the old town of Zinder itself, known for its traditional mud brick homes again, vibrant markets, and preserved local traditions.
So more traditional architecture and local life.
And the source also highlights cultural festivals and music events as being part of Zinder's appeal. So, a living culture.
Right. And finally, there's a brief mention of a region near Lake Chad.
Yeah, Diffa and the Lake Chad region. Described as less frequented, maybe quieter, offering a different pace, peaceful views, good bird watching, and a chance for cultural immersion with local communities there.
And framed as good for ecotourism, perhaps.
Exactly. The source suggests it's ideal for that kind of traveler.
So the source paints this picture of quite a range of landscapes and historical sites, but travel is also very much about, culture and food. What does the source tell us about Niger's cultural side?
Well, it really emphasizes Niger's cultural diversity. Describes it as a mosaic, basically, of different ethnic groups, mentioning the Hausa, Zarma, Tuareg, and Fulani specifically.
Okay, a mix of peoples.
And it mentions things like traditional music, crafts, local attire, dances, all contributing to what it calls a rich cultural experience for any visitor. It's suggesting that interacting with this mosaic is a really central part of the trip's value.
Makes sense. And the food. Does the source get specific about the cuisine?
It does list a few specific dishes someone might encounter. It names jollof rice.
Oh, West African staple, right?
Yeah. Also toe, which is described as a millet-based porridge. Grilled meat skewers, can't go wrong there.
Usually pretty good.
And something called fira danono millet balls, served in yogurt. So, giving you a few concrete examples of local food to try.
Interesting to get those specifics from the source. Now, how does the booking tool, FlightNHotels.com, supposedly tie into these culinary or cultural experiences? Can you book a cooking class?
Maybe not a class specifically, but the source makes the explicit claim that you can use FlightNHotels.com to, and I quote, find restaurants near your stay or book tours that include culinary experiences.
Okay, so finding places to eat or maybe organize tours that have a food component.
Yeah, so the source is positioning the tool as a way to access the local food and culture scene directly. It's trying to extend its reported usefulness beyond just beds and transport.
Okay, right. Let's get practical then. Based on the source's advice, when is the best time to visit Niger, according to this guide, weather-wise?
The source strongly recommends visiting between November and February. That period apparently offers cooler, more comfortable weather.
Especially crucial for desert exploration, I imagine.
Exactly. It advises avoiding the really intense heat you typically find from April to June. And it does acknowledge July to September is the rainy season, which, might impact travel plans.
Good to know. And how does the source suggest you actually get there? Flights.
The primary international entry point is Niamey International Airport. The code is NI.
NIM. Got it.
And the source lists examples of where flights might come from. Paris, Istanbul, Abuja over in Nigeria, Casablanca in Morocco.
Yeah.
Suggesting there are key international connections.
Okay, so reachable from Europe and other parts of Africa.
Well,
and once you've arrived, how does the source recommend getting around within Niger?
it lists the usual options: domestic flights, buses, rental cars.
Yeah.
However, it makes a specific point for flexibility, especially in those more remote areas.
Yeah.
It specifically suggests considering a rental car with driver services.
Ah, interesting. Hiring a car and a driver. Probably wise for unfamiliar roads or desert tracks.
That seems to be the rationale presented. And the source, again, links that specific recommendation back to the tool.
It does. How so?
It states that this type of rental, the car with driver service, which the source positions as particularly useful, can be booked via FlightNHotels.com.
Okay, so again, framing the platform as capable of handling these specific, maybe slightly more complex local logistics.
Exactly, making it seem manageable.
What other essential practical tips does the source throw in for travelers? The basics.
It covers the visa situation, mentioning most travelers will need one, and recommends checking with embassies well in advance. Standard advice, but important.
Always good to check visas early.
Then health precautions. It specifically advises vaccinations or prevention for yellow fever and malaria.
Also standard for the region, makes sense.
It names the currency, the West African CFA franc, XOF, and lists the main languages. French is official, but also major local languages like Hausa, Zarma, and Tamashek, which is the Tuareg language.
Okay, good practical wrap up there. So let's pull back a bit. What's the overall picture this source is painting?
Well, it portrays Niger as this really rich, diverse, and largely undiscovered destination, offering pretty much everything from dramatic landscapes and ancient history to vibrant cultures and unique wildlife.
A compelling package, if that's what you're looking for.
Absolutely. And woven throughout this whole description, the constant underlying argument is that this specific tool, FlightNHotels.com, is presented as the essential companion to unlock this whole experience.
Right. The source positions FlightNHotels.com not just as like a standard booking engine.
No, much more than that. It's framed as the comprehensive all-in-one solution, designed supposedly to make travel to a destination like Niger feasible and manageable.
Covering everything from flights and hotels
to cars, even those cars with drivers, and potentially specialized local tours as well.
And the source lists specific benefits for the tool itself, doesn't it?
It does. Things like comparing hotel prices from multiple sources, finding discounted flights with flexible options, the ability to rent cars worldwide, implicitly, including remote regions like Niger.
Okay.
And it highlights having a user-friendly interface and secure booking process. Accessible anywhere, basically.
So from the source's perspective, these features are presented as directly addressing the initial hurdles, the perceived complexities of traveling to a less visited place like Niger.
Exactly. It's aiming to make it feel accessible, less daunting. The argument is that the tool bridges that gap between, desiring an off-the-beaten-path adventure and the actual practical steps needed to plan it.
So our deep dive into the source material, it clearly shows it's making a strong case for Niger, portraying it as a destination just brimming with authentic nature, culture, adventure.
That's the core pitch.
And the central message is that this specific booking tool, FlightNHotels.com, is designed or at least presented as your guide and facilitator every step of the way, making this kind of exploration seem possible, even easy.
What's fascinating is how the source intertwines the allure of this truly unique, seemingly remote destination.
Yeah.
With the claimed convenience and capability of a modern global booking platform. It's suggesting that the age of easily accessible, super commercialized travel doesn't have to be the only way to go.
Right.
And that tools exist, or this tool specifically exists, according to the source, to make even places like Niger feel within reach for independent travelers who are really seeking something different.
It really does make you think, doesn't it, about how we discover and then actually access new places in a world where, let's face it, there's so much information swirling around and booking tools are everywhere. How does a platform that's designed for global convenience, for booking a hotel in Paris or London, also act as a kind of curator or a guide, pointing us towards and simplifying access to destinations that intentionally brand themselves, as this source does for Niger, as underrated and relatively untouched? It's an interesting dynamic the source itself brings up.